Spurs Up podcast. Chris, I got to ask you one question before we get rolling. First off, how are you tonight? But secondly, where can I get the big cock hat that you had the other night on the show?
Yeah, it's this guy right here, actually. I got it on.
Look at it, the Big Cock Club.
Yeah.
You got to love it.
Yeah, I always tell people, Blake, if you have to ask, you can't get in. But for you, my friend, we'll make it happen. No, for you, man, we got it on our online store, actually, over at tsus.store, shameless plug, where you can find all of our merchandise. But, Blake, I was going to say, man, I'm doing great tonight. I'm having a very relaxing evening, especially since the fact that I don't have to step in the box tomorrow night and face Paul Skeens throwing 100 miles an hour. So I'm doing pretty well. I'm pretty calm here on this Wednesday night. How you guys doing?
Doing good. So, Chris, let's start off with that. So last night, shamelessly, as you know, I got to be honest. So listen, I don't tell a lot of people this, but I'll say it here. The Honeycutt kid from North Carolina, I am a massive fan of. Massive. I've talked to the kid. We've exchanged text messages back and forth. The kid is really good. He's a really good dude. So I was watching that game last night because I was really intrigued. Obviously, LSU is going to play South Carolina and Columbia this weekend. Eli Jones comes out into the 8th inning and strikes out the side. What can you tell us about that as a guy who's been a Thursday or game one starter? What do you think's going on with Eli Jones and this rotation for South Carolina at the current moment?
Yeah, well, when you look at the record and the overall, layout of this ball club right now, just what they've done, Blake, it's fascinating, really, that storyline. Will Sanders returns to the rotation this weekend. He'll get the ball, get the start tomorrow night in game one. And he was sort of looked at, right, the preseason all-everything, All-American, sort of like Paul Skeens for South Carolina, right, a big right-hander, fireballer, if you will, can run the fastball up there, 96, 97, but it's just kind of struggled. Hasn't really been sharp. Didn't pitch all summer or fall of last year, and I think he just looked to be a bit rusty at this point in the season. So wanted to switch things up. They gave him the weekend off, and Eli Jones, who had been a midweek guy and a bullpen guy up until this point, had pitched well, but just a midweek guy, got the opportunity last Thursday, and I thought he was fantastic, at Mississippi State, and looked composed, looked calm, which I think is the big thing. Obviously, you go to an SEC school, Blake, you got good stuff, but the composure that he showed and the moxie and overall – I just thought he embraced the moment. And, again, the stuff was good. He located, looked calm, and did a great job for you. So he pitches in that game last night. I would expect to see him out of the bullpen this weekend unless Noah Hall, the Gamecocks' normal Game 2 starter, unless he cannot go on Saturday, which if they get the game in, we'll see. I think the weather's obviously a big storyline this weekend. But if Noah Hall can't go, I think Eli Jones is probably the next man up in regards to getting in that starting rotation. And certainly he should be with the job he did in Starkville. But, he's got a bright future, man. I mean, he's a young kid. I think only his second year in the program and, runs the fastball 93, 94. A lot of movement, though. Eli Jones is sort of like James Hicks, where it's just like everything moves, everything dances. In the strikes, so they do a really good break stuff. It's good. It's filthy. It plays for sure. So he misses barrels, man. That's what it comes down to. He might not have the most electric stuff on that staff, if you will, but he just flat out misses barrels and he pitches with confidence. And, that can win in the SEC and that can win you a lot of ball games. So I think Eli Jones is certainly, and this pitching staff, is really, Blake, I say it's the calling card, but it's funny. You look at the offensive stats, you look at the home runs, and I think that's what everybody wants to talk about with South Carolina. But coming into the season, it was the immense amounts of pitching depth, the embarrassment of riches, if you're on the bump, that the Gamecocks were hanging their hat on. And sure enough, Blake, this, when you have the pitching depth and you got guys who are confidently swinging the stick and you're getting hot at the plate, that's why you're 27-3 and 8-1 SEC play. So this weekend is going to be a lot of fun, man. It's good on good, as they like to say in football. That's exactly what we have this weekend.
I'll ask you about the weather last because everybody wants to know everything in between before the weather is told.
Right.
Are you surprised that South Carolina is doing so good with the injuries that they have? Now, you mentioned Noah Hall maybe being the Game 2 guy, but are you surprised that South Carolina is 27-3, 18-0 at home, 8-1 in the conference, with some of the really bad injuries that they've had to overcome so far this year?
Well, Blake, when you think back to last year, they really haven't been as snake-bitten as they were a season ago, where it just felt like every top pitcher suffered an injury. I mean, they were really scraping bottom of the barrel to find guys to contribute on the bump. So in comparison to last year, they're pretty healthy. Now, obviously, you think about Carson Hornung, Will McGillis. Those are some of your bigger sticks that are out right now due to injury. Nothing too long term. They'll be back in plenty of time for the postseason, stuff like that. But they are contributors that are out right now. Jacob Compton, the Memphis transfer, he hasn't played all year, and that's something Kingston mentioned today, that a red shirt may potentially be in his future. I think you talk about kind of the Noah Hall stuff right now, and I guess he's been dealing with this back thing all year long, and that really speaks to the competitor he is and just his toughness, if you will. But so I'll just say this: whether it be injuries or not, you want to factor them in, you don't want to factor them in. Am I surprised that South Carolina's 27-3 and 8-1 in SEC play? I think if you're a Gamecock fan and you say no, Blake, you'd be lying to yourself. I really felt like this team – I really felt like with the pitching depth, this team was going to be a lot better. But I'll tell you this, Blake, just to be transparent, my preseason prediction for the Gamecocks was 34-22 and 15-15 in SEC play. And you've got 27 wins through 30 games. So I don't think anybody saw this coming to this level. I felt like this team had a great chance to be much improved with the addition of Monty Lee on the coaching staff, coming over from the arch rival as an assistant, now your hitting coach. There's obviously been a change in philosophy. We see that every single time the Gamecocks take the field. And then also the way Mark Kingston flipped this roster. LSU is very familiar with the transfer portal and how beneficial it can be. The Gamecocks did the same thing, man. You look, I think over half of their home runs have come from guys that were not on the roster a season ago. Again, you couple that with you're much healthier than you were this time last year. You got a bunch of guys also that were freshmen last year that were thrust in the fire. They're now sophomores making big contributions. I'm talking about the Hornungs, the Messinas, who's been a big-time guy right in the middle of the lineup, the Lee Croys, if you will. So, I'm not surprised this team is vastly improved. But to be 27-3, 8-1, and to be 6th overall in the country right now in the rankings, I don't know that I thought it'd be quite that good. But, it's been a fun ride, man. This is a team that I knew was immensely talented, and I said it all preseason. If they don't win, it's not because of a lack of talent. It's something else. And we all knew about one of the big storylines is Mark Kingston, his job status, and kind of being on the hot seat, if you will, because the expectations that South Carolina are what they are. But, again, long story short, I'm a bit surprised at how good it is, but I'm not surprised, Blake, that this team is good. No, I'm not. This team has talent. And, again, you combine that pitching depth with a hot lineup. And then, again, Ethan Petrie, who I haven't even mentioned, maybe the best freshman in all of college baseball, been a pleasant surprise. But you couple those things together and, you get 27-3 and 8-1 in SEC play.
Yeah, so let's go on the offensive side of things. Chris, I don't know if you heard earlier, but at a Petrie, Wimmer, Cassis, I think is how you pronounce his last name. Yeah. Cassis and Cole Messina, who plays a pretty decent infield and first base. Their combined batting average is .350. Chris, they have 46 home runs, 142 RBIs. That is the most dangerous front four that I think LSU will see all year. Offensively, y'all lead the country in home runs. Let me ask this, because I saw you tweet something today or last night, I don't remember, and I thought it was funny because we have not seen, as LSU fans, Paul Skeens enough to really be like, oh, yeah, you got Paul Skeens. Sometimes when you get a new player, it takes a little while, a.k.a. Joe Burrow. But nevertheless, you tweeted out like, hey, guys, we're going up against Paul Skeens. But this lineup, this front four is the best that he's going to see all year, in my personal opinion, or at least that he's seen so far. What have you seen from the front four of this South Carolina Gamecock offense?
They're lethal. It reminds you of the old school Ray Tanner days when they had the murderer's row of Smoke, Disher, Darnell, and Havens. I don't know if you recall them, but
it was ridiculous.
The most talented teams.
I
would say the most talented teams in South Carolina history to not win a national championship, to not even get to Omaha. By the way, that really speaks to the troubles they had in the bullpen and the pitching staff, if you will. But it really does remind you of just the old school days of those Ray Tanner teams that. I've had a bunch of guys on my show and talked to a bunch of guys and have relationships with a bunch of guys that played for Ray Tanner. And, they said old school Ray would tell you that singles clog the bases. Let's hit home runs. Let's hit it over the fence. You know what I mean? Like, if you got the 2-0, you'd look down there at third base at the dugout or whatever, and he'd just look at you and he'd just point. Like, that's the green light. Like, let's go. Let's go. We need a bomb. You know what I mean? So, It's in, Mark Kingston's mentioned it too. It's in the culture. It's woven into the fabric of South Carolina baseball, sort of like LSU, right? Like power. Like power is, I think you guys, don't you call it the power factory? I think that's LSU baseball. I could be mistaken.
Yeah, that or gorilla ball is what they go.
Right. So,
go gorilla ball.
Right. Yeah. So it's just one of those things. And you look at, again, you mentioned, Petrie's just been incredible. He is on. I compare him to either a Grayson Griner or a Christian Walker as a true freshman. I mean, he's having that type of campaign, and maybe even better, I would say, at this point in his South Carolina career. He's just seeing a beach ball right now. I think Cole Messina has sort of turned into the heartbeat of this ball club, and really that leader, if you're that emotional leader. Every time I watch this ball club, he's making something happen. He's yelling at the dugout in a positive way, obviously, and leading this group. And I think it's a great thing to have, especially from your catcher, right? You need that guy. Gavin Cassis, I mean, what a roll of the dice that has paid off immensely for Mark Kingston and company. A guy that really didn't play all that much at Vanderbilt, but he's got those ties, right? His brother's playing for the Boston Red Sox, and you got that pedigree. And I mean, dude, he's
second in the league in home runs.
Right, he's a perfect fit at Founders Park. That park is built for big time left-hand hitters. Like Justin Smoke probably would have hit 50 in a season had he played there. I mean, the wind blows off that river left to right, blows out to right field. And if it really gets gusting, man, you can just pepper balls over that right field fence. So it's been a lot of fun to watch, man. I mean, again, it's really been a return of power. But the good news has been this, Blake, that we've seen power in the Mark Kingston era, but it's always felt like it was coupled with feast or famine. I think this year what you're seeing is even when the home run's not there, they're being much more productive. But obviously the numbers, Blake, speak to it. This team is at its best when it's hitting home runs, and thankfully that has happened a lot this season.
Well, with Ethan Petrie, now that you say that it goes from from left into right field, I mean he's hitting nukes out and left, so that just tells you how strong that kid is. All right, one more question before I got to talk to you about Beamer ball. One more question. How do you see this weekend playing out? Now you talked about the weather earlier. I want you to factor that in your answer. I guess give us an update on that and what's going on in South Carolina. And then, two, how do you see this weekend playing out?
So as we all know, right, they've got 3 days to play 3 games. They can't play on Sunday, which I don't really understand. I don't think anybody really understands, but it's the SEC rule. And I hate to talk about the weather because I hate to think about the fact they may not get 3 games in this weekend. It'd be a damn shame. And unfortunately, I think the Rowdy Roosters which is what we call the best hecklers in all of college baseball, if you will. I think they'll show up. They'll be loud. They'll be proud tomorrow night. How does it affect the atmosphere, though? I think if you're an LSU fan, you got to really like that maybe we're not going to get the rowdiest environment, at least in games 2 and 3. Because realistically, Blake, I think if they're going to get it in, they're probably going to have to play that doubleheader on Friday and just try to get as much baseball in as possible because Saturday looks like a complete wash. I mean, 100% chance of rain. And, I know weathermen have missed before, but my God, if you miss on this one, find a new line of work, my friend. They ought to cut his ass, man. I'm just telling you right now, they ought to cut his ass. The guy calling the weather for this series, the guy calling the weather for the Masters, he ought to be gone because it's got to be the same jabroni. You know what I mean? So,
no doubt.
It looks like to me they'll probably have to play 2 on Friday, but let's just assume they get all 3 in, right? I want to operate that way and be optimistic. LSU hasn't swept anybody this year. I was taking a look, and that kind of surprised me, right? As good as they are, 6-3 in conference play, and it looks like to me it's been game 3 that they've struggled in, giving them trouble. I think all 3 series they've lost game 3, so they haven't gone to a rubber match yet. I've seen some LSU fans on social media kind of chirping about, Sundays are our kryptonite, and what are we going to do about our Sunday starter? Our Sunday starter's keeping us from an Omaha run. There's a lot of SEC teams, though, I'll say, that have issues with the Sunday roll.
Pause for just a second. Pause for just a second for a round of applause. Thank you. Continue.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of SEC teams though that battle that. And that's, I think, something that gives the Gamecocks the upper hand is that they've got 3 studs you can roll out there in the weekend rotation. Unfortunately, here's my questions with Carolina. What's the status of Noah Hall? How is Will Sanders going to pitch after a week off against Paul Skeens? And I understand to your point, Blake, that we haven't seen enough of him. And I think what you can do is you can fall in a dangerous trap. And I'm sure you're familiar with this. Like when teams play Alabama in football, they lose before they even play to them. They lose to the logo. They lose to the tradition. They lose to the history because they put them on this pedestal and they make them out to be something even more than what they already are. So a guy like Paul Skeens, and I'm sure the Gamecocks hitters aren't doing this, but the last thing you want to do is be sitting here tonight and being like, oh, man, like watching all his highlights. He throws 100. I don't know how we're going to hit him. Like, you got to go out there and believe, like, he ain't shit. We're going to rock it. You got to have that confidence. And I think Carolina will. I think it's going to be probably the series of the year in college baseball. I think it's two great teams. I love the attitude I'm seeing from South Carolina. They're good. We're good. Let's go play. That should be the attitude, right? You embrace the gauntlet of the SEC. You embrace playing best on best. With that being said, and oh, by the way, you factor in LSU's lineup, Tommy Tanks, Dylan Cruz, Gavin Dugas at 20. I was doing my preview of the series Blake, before we jumped on, and I didn't even mention like Trey Morgan, who's a stud. He's a stud. He's at like 340. No big deal. I think LSU, I think it's back and forth. I think if they get 3 games in, I think the Tigers have one more punch than South Carolina, even though the series is at Founders Park. I think LSU benefits from probably not having to get the worst of Founders, if you will. So I've got LSU taking 2 out of 3. I know Gamecock fans will hate me for it, but I've always been known to give an honest opinion, an honest take, an honest pick, Blake. And so I'm going with LSU 2 of 3. But I think South Carolina, because there's been a lot of questions about their schedule, who they've played, whatever. I think the Gamecocks, even in losing 2 of 3, will show they're for real this weekend. Like, I think they're going to go toe-to-toe with the best team in college baseball. I mean, listen, if you beat Paul Skeens, all bets are off. Hey, all bets are off. But right now, South Carolina, if there's one thing offensively they've been susceptible to, it's the strikeout. And damn it, Paul Skeens has got a lot of them. And I mean, his numbers, his spread, what is it, like 88 strikeouts to, or 83 strikeouts to 8 walks? I mean, not only does he throw 100, but he spots it. He spots it.
Right.
Like, that's insane. So, I think if you're Carolina tomorrow night, the goal just has to be, hey, get your hacks off for sure. I mean, if you want to let your best guys, your Casses, your Petries, your Messinas, go up there, you get ahead in the count, sit that fastball, just pull the trigger and pray to God you run into it because it may not land if you do that. But shorten up, find a way, be productive. And Will Sanders has to be electric because you might have to win 1-0, 2-1, 3-2. Welcome to game 1 in the SEC. So it's going to be an electric weekend, but I'm going to roll with LSU right now, 2 of 3 in the series.
Austin Greer on YouTube says Chris picking against SC worked well for him last night too. So I did see that.
See, a lot of Gamecock fans will rejoice because they think I'm the kiss of death. So it'll, they think it'll go. They're like, thank God he didn't pick us to take the series because now it's guaranteed the Yardcocks are going to get it done. So hey, whatever I can do to help the Gamecocks, I'm all for it.
All right, so I got to ask you about Beamer Ball. How's it going this spring?
It's going fantastic. I mean, I think in the spring, Blake, you can probably agree that, no news is good news for the most part. I mean, the last thing you want to hear is something big happened because normally it's something bad, right? Like somebody got hurt, something unexpected. Heck, I don't know. Somebody got in trouble. We've seen that already earlier in this year from South Carolina. But, no, things are going well, man. Spring game is next weekend. I mean, it's never a bad time, obviously, to talk SEC football, but spring game next weekend, just kind of trying to figure out, not to sound like a coach, but trying to figure out who we got and who's going to contribute and who's not, if you will. But, I mean, all accounts, man, spring ball is going well. I mean, Shane Beamer and company, they're keeping up the momentum in recruiting. They just had a Florida State DN, which edge is a position they need to bolster. They had a kid visiting today. I think the portal opens May 1st. And I think
from Florida State, correct?
Yeah. You're going to see them be very active, I think, in the portal, which, I mean, Shane Beamer's got a reputation now. He's obviously going to attack it, but they're going to be active and I think getting an edge and a running back. But, I think spring is going really well based off what Shane Beamer said. I'm excited for the spring game, and it'll be a great one, night spring game yet again. But, I mean, there's plenty of momentum, man, right now around Beamer Ball. And, you come off a season like they did, man, and beat Tennessee. And Clem sucks, as we call them on my show. You beat those 2 teams to end the season. I mean, you close out a season the way they did, man, in improbable fashion. And the hype train is full steam ahead, my friend. I can guarantee you that. But I guess if the Gamecocks need any sort of inspiration of why can't we win the SEC East, I mean, did anybody pick LSU to win the West last year? Hey, crazy things happen. You never know. I'm not trying to set unrealistic expectations, but I'm just saying, you never know. So,
I mean, look, let's call it what it is. I will be honest. I did not. Okay, like I did not have LSU winning the West. I mean, because look, it's Bama. They got Bryce Young and Will Anderson. So, no, I didn't. But Brian Kelly proved a lot of people wrong. Last question.
Go ahead. I was going to say,
Brian
Brian Kelly must have gotten a lot of support from his family. That's what happened. It worked out.
Yeah,
I know that joke. I know that joke's so old. I apologize.
Man, can I tell you something? Because look, people, and I don't mean this in a cocky way. Okay, you have a lot of followers on Twitter. We got a lot of followers on Twitter, Facebook, etc. The amount of it's like this Angel Reese thing in a way. Like I am so tired of having to talk about the family thing. It's such a point. I actually, how you can like unsearched words, or if no words come up on your feed.
Word. Yeah.
Family was the number one word for like 2 months. I got to
win
admit.
some favor with the LSU folks. I was pro the trash talk, so I'm all for it. You know, it's so funny. I'll just say, quote unquote, media. I don't put myself really in the media box, but I think we as just sports fans, like, we complain that these athletes are robots and, they're just giving pre-canned answers. And then when they do finally show emotion, it's like, it's classless. Like, bro, just let them talk. Let them talk trash. If you don't like somebody doing this in your face, well, then don't let them beat you. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Right. What did T.O. used to say? If you don't like me dancing in the end zone, don't let me score. It's as simple as that.
It's true. So Spencer Rattler, the last question I got for you tonight. Spencer Rattler, look, the last, let's just call it month of the season, he turned it on. He looked really good. A lot of people who written him off couldn't write him off anymore. New offensive coordinator, Freddie Kitchens, is in town now. I guess, how do you see that offense rolling? Can they do what they did last year? Can they take down and slay the giant?
Yeah. I think that's the big question, Blake, is which Spencer Rattler do we see more of, right? The one we saw in the final 2 games of the season or the first 10 games, right? Where Spencer Rattler, what's crazy, right, Blake? A lot of people miss this. He threw more touchdowns, 6. He had 6 touchdown passes in that Tennessee game. That was more than he threw in the entire month of October. I mean, that's how badly the season had gone. At one point, he was 5 touchdowns to 9 interceptions, right? So, I think that's the big question, is just consistency for Rattler. It's in there. He's got the talent. He's got the capability. It's just, will he be more consistent? Obviously, you got Dowell Loggins coming in. He's an unproven commodity to a degree. That was a very highly debated topic, especially by yours truly. I wasn't exactly thrilled with the hire, right? A guy whose track record or resume in the NFL was, just call it for what it is, as porous as it was. But Shane Beamer believes in him. And I think the big question, did Shane Beamer and company learn from last year? Because when they dumbed it down and when they scaled back and they removed the 15-word play calls and they just said, go play ball, things worked out well. Now, is that going to work out well enough to win 9, 10, 11 games? I have no idea, but it's going to be a lot more fun to watch in the process. So I think the offense will be better, Blake, to answer your question. I think Spencer Rattler will be better. This is his money year. He's done going to the NFL draft this one. He's got his favorite target back in Juice Wells, who emerged. I think you could argue he's the best returning pass catcher in the SEC. They loaded up at the tight end position. Nicholas Harbor comes in, by the way, who is like the fastest man alive, basically.
Yeah, that was an outright steal. That kid's going to play day one, game one. Yeah. It was an outright steal.
Yeah, Beamer said he's going to play wide receiver. So Spencer Rattler is going to have weapons at his disposal. And I also, Blake, don't think the Gamecocks, I don't think they're going to be built to run the ball for 200 yards a game. So I think a lot of it's going to fall on Rattler. I think they will be improved offensively. I don't think it'll be nearly as dreadful to watch as it was at times. How much better? That's the question. I think what it comes down to for Rattler is just purely consistency. Excuse me. And again, he's got all the potential. He's got all the talent. We saw it the last 2 games. Can he do it on a consistent basis? And can he protect the football? He was miserable at that a season ago. Got to be better than that. If he can do that, there's no reason why I think Spencer Rattler couldn't be, dare I say, an all-conference quarterback at season's end.
All right, people keep asking me to ask you this question. They said, Brandon Reese says, hashtag Ask Blake, can you ask Chris how he feels about Oklahoma and Texas coming into the SEC?
I love it. I mean, I love it, man. As a content creator of an SEC team and somebody who loves the league, I mean, why would you not love it, right? You're bringing in 2 behemoths in the college sports world, and Oklahoma and Texas, and you think about the matchups. I think everybody goes straight to football, and they think about that. What about baseball, man? We're talking about baseball? I mean, horns down, am I right? I can't wait for it. I'm excited. I'm pumped. I'm ecstatic. I think that, like Beamer said, man, you just got to embrace the competition and run towards it. And, we're getting closer, man, towards, mega conferences, 2 or 3 big ones. But
I agree.
It's good to be invited and in the party if you're there. So I think for LSU, South Carolina, and the rest of us, why not join the party and, best on best. And it just makes it tougher. But, that's the pressure's there. It's always there. So it'll be a lot of fun to watch.
Hey, as I told, never mind, I'm not going to say it, I'm married, but as I will say this very quietly, I ain't got to go home with the hottest girl at the party, but I'm going to go home with a honey. You know what I'm saying? All right, it's Chris Phillips, the Spurs Up Podcast, Spurs Up Show. Hey man, tell everybody where they can find your stuff, and if you don't mind, send me the link to your shop. I want to get one of them hats, man.
Dude, yeah, no, I got you. I'll definitely hook you up with the merch for sure. But yeah, we're at the Spurs Up Show, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, even TikTok. We're all over social media. The podcast drops Monday, Thursday at 5 a.m., by the way, for our early birds. But Monday, Thursday, when the podcast drops, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, everywhere you get your podcast. And then we do a daily live show, which is called the Daily Crow, no pun intended. Monday through Friday, noon to 2, which airs on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. And we take questions, comments, calls. So if any LSU folks, you want to call in tomorrow, talk some baseball, would love to have it. Always love when the rival fans call in. Again, we do merchandise, we do events, we do a little bit of everything.